Hi again. Mm, So I got some comments and a few calls from various institutions and banks and all, asking why I didn't address the crisis in Sri Lanka. Crisis in the sense the gas crisis they had, electricity problem, electricity crisis, medicines, and the equipment crisis, and the riots in the country, queues for oil and gas, lack of foreign remittance to pay the essential items. So, to my knowledge, I'll answer those questions. So, for an example, there are multiple crises that Sri Lanka is currently facing: gas, electricity, medicines, riots, queues on the oil and gas, lack of foreign remittance to pay for essential and most important goods or services. So let's start talking about the gas issue over there. The shortage of gas has caused a significant amount of inconvenience to the general public, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic, where many people are confined to their homes. The government has taken steps to address the issue, such as importing gas from other countries and providing gas cylinders at subsidized rates to lower income families. However, this is a temporary solution, and the government needs to implement long term measures such as investing in domestic gas production and exploration or reduce dependency on imports. Similarly, the electricity crisis has been a significant challenge for Sri Lanka. The country has been facing a severe shortage of electricity, resulting in power cuts and blackouts. To address this issue, the government has introduced power generation through renewable energy sources, such as solar, wind power, and recently I heard from the waves of the ocean waves. However, to ensure sustainable power supply, there should not be any corruption. So apparently, there are few guys in these ministries and this these boards who wants what do you call something for them to make these things happen in Sri Lanka. So anyway, the government should invest and in the infrastructure development, uh, such as transmission lines and grids to distribute the generated electricity, or give the chance to the public sector and not interfere with what they're trying to do, or chase away the guys who's corrupt in those boards and ministries. That's what you have to do. And the medicine also, it's another critical issue. The shortage of essential medicines has been a major concern for patients. I saw on YouTube that people are dying, people are getting heart attacks, and all sorts of things on those queues. So, particularly, yeah, the chronic illnesses, the government needs to improve the supply chain management system for medicines and increase the production of essential drugs locally to address this issue. Also, the riots in Sri Lanka have caused significant damage to the country's economy, with many businesses suffering losses. the government must take some steps to restore law and order and ensure the perpetrators of the riots are held accountable. Additionally, the government must focus on providing support to businesses affected by the riots, such as like offering some financial aid or tax exemptions and all. Yeah, but instead of offering them tax exemptions and giving relief, I heard the government have charged them more on gas, and there are still blackouts for the factories, and most of the factories are trying to relocate in some other parts of the world. So those issues are there. So the government should really look into this matter if they want to have a sustainable foreign remittance and all. And moving to the questions on oil and gas, Sri Lanka has a significant potential for oil and gas exploration. I think that is happening, but I don't know what's the current state of it. But I think it's in the particularly in the Mana Basin. However, the exploration process is currently facing severe challenges, including lack of investment and oppositions of environmentalists. The government must address these issues and take steps to promote oil and gas exploration to reduce the country's dependency on imports. And the other matter, the lack of foreign remittance to pay for essentials is another critical issue in that Sri Lanka is facing. The country uh, heavily relies on foreign remittances, particularly from the Middle East to support its economy. However, due to this COVID-19 pandemic, many migrant workers have lost their jobs, resulting reduction in remittances. So, to address this issue, the government must take steps to create employment opportunities locally and promote local businesses to reduce the country's dependency on foreign remittances. So, if we take like a conclusion, Sri Lanka is currently facing multiple challenges, including the gas crisis, electricity, medicine, and all sorts of things. So, to overcome these issues, government must implement long-term measures, including investing in infrastructure, development, uh, development programs regarding those, like for example, promoting local businesses, creating employment opportunities. And also, additionally, the government must ensure that the necessary steps are taken to restore law and order and hold the perpetrators of the riots accountable by working together. I think there'll be a bright future for Sri Lanka if these things happen. Uh, and now, for an example, that the big riot and protests were in Gulf in Sri Lanka, and the impact on the country's economy, the riots occurred in May, I think, 2021. It was like significant setback for the country's economy. So the riots caused damage to property, vehicles, businesses, and cost of the damage is estimated to be like around 15 billion Sri Lankan rupees. So the impact of the riots was felt across the country, with many businesses suffering losses, many people losing their livelihoods, some houses were burnt. I think the main factors that contributed to these riots was the rising cost of living in Sri Lanka. The cost of basic essentials such as food, fuel, medicine has been increasing, and many people were struggling to make the ends meet. So the situation has been situation has been exacerbated with the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't know it's the right word, but I think that hopefully, yeah, pandemic, which had a significant impact on the country's economy, and also the role played by NGOs and opposition students, student bodies, and political parties in fueling the crisis. Those can't be ignored. So these groups have been vocal in their criticism of the government's policies, particularly the economic policies. They have organized protests and demonstrations, which have often turned violent, contributing to the deterioration of the law and order situation in the country. These NGOs have been working with Sri Lanka for many years, providing assistance for the vulnerable communities and advocating the human rights. However, some NGOs have been accused of having a political agenda and of working to destabilize the government. These accusations have led to increased increased scrutiny of NGOs, and some have been accused of violating the country's law. These student bodies who have these big riots and protests and all, and these political parties have also played a significant role in fueling the crisis. So they have organized protests, demonstrations, which have often turned violent and have been critical of the government's economic policies. Some have even call for the overthrow of the government, like Gotabaya. He was like overthrown, which was further contributed to the deterioration of the law and order situation in the country. So the impact of the Gulf-based riots on the country's economy has been significant. Yeah, significant. So the riots have caused damage to businesses and infrastructure, and the cost of repairing the damage is estimated to be around 15 billion. And the riots also have affected the tourism industry, the significant contributor. That's a very significant contributor for the economy, and many who tourists have cancelled the trips to Sri Lanka, resulting in significant losses for the whoever was in the industry. So these Gulf-based riots in Sri Lanka have had a significant impact on the country's economy. The riots have caused damage to property, businesses, infrastructure, and the cost of repairing the damage is significant. The role played by NGOs and the opposition, like sort of student bodies and even the political parties, fueling the crisis, that can't be ignored. These groups have been critical of the government's policies, and their protests and demonstrations have often turned violent, contributing to the deterioration of the law and order in the country. I think the government, at least the current government, must take steps to restore law and order, addressing the rising costs of living, and create employment opportunities so that way you can boost the economy. I believe that that's the way. Like, like for example, Sri Lanka or any other country, like if we provide some general guidelines that governments usually follow to improve the economy. It's like example, you can take stimulating investments. that is like to improve the economy. It's crucial. It's very crucial to attract foreign domestic investments. The government must create an environment that is conducive to investments, such as improving infrastructure, providing taxing incentives, re reducing bureaucracy hurdles, and the government also can partner with the private sector to develop infrastructure projects which will attract foreign investors, and creating employment opportunities another side. So this lack of employment opportunities is a significant factor contributing to the economic crisis in Sri Lanka, and the government must focus on creating new jobs and training the workforce to meet the demands of the job market. So that way, by that can be achieved by promoting entrepreneurship, uh, expanding the manufacturing sector, investing in education and training programs, such as like so also promoting exports. Sri Lanka highly dependent on exports, which is a significant drain on the economy. So to improve the economy, the government must promote exports and reduce the reliance on the imports. And also the government can offer incentives to the exporters, such as tax exemptions and subsidiaries, and encourage them to expand their businesses. But what does the EDB do? Now, I personally know those factories, when they wanted those glass bottles and jars from China, these guys delayed it. So EDB in Sri Lanka is like it's like just for the name. I don't think if you talk to a proper factory owner or like a proper business guy over there, I mean, like if you talk to them straight, they'll say that okay, these guys don't do anything. I believe what these guys do is like going like foreign trips and all, saying this they are going to promote Sri Lankan businesses. I'm not so that's what I think. So maybe it's different, but that's what I think, and that's what I've heard the people told me. And the other thing is like the debt crisis. You have to address that. Now Sri Lanka is facing a significant debt crisis, which is significant burden on the economy. The government must address the debt crisis by reducing government spending, increasing revenue collection, restructuring the debt, and the government can also seek assistance from international finance institutions such as the IMF to manage the crisis. And the other thing they can do is improving the infrastructure, which I talked before also. It's a crucial factor in improving the economy. So the government must focus on developing infrastructure such as roads, railways, ports, airports, to improve the connectivity within the country and with the other countries. And this way also it will help attracting foreign investment and promoting exports and creating employment opportunities. So the other thing is like since Sri Lanka is most dependent on like it's another side, the tourism. So tourism is a significant contributor to the Sri Lankan economy, and the government must focus on promoting tourism by improving infrastructure, developing tourist destinations, and marketing Sri Lanka as a tourist destination. And the government can also offer incentives to investors in the tourism sector. So the government of Sri Lanka must focus on creating an environment that is conducive to investment, promoting exports, creating employment opportunities, addressing the debt crisis, improving infrastructure, and promoting tourism. to improve, if they really want to improve the economy, it's essential to develop a long-term economic plan that is sustainable and will lead to long-term growth. And now these people most of the time talk about like, oh, all these people have go on riots, and people who badmouth in YouTube against government. uh, I don't have the most up-to-date information about the specific terms and conditions that the International Monetary Fund has put on Sri Lanka, as it may be vary, and depending on the current state of Sri Lanka, economy, and ongoing negotiations with the IMF and the Sri Lankan government. However, in general, when the IMF provides financial assistance to a country, it typically comes with a set of conditions, so that the current country must meet to receive the funds. These conditions are designed to promote economic stability and growth in the country, and may include like this fiscal policy reform. This may involve reducing government spending, increasing revenue collection, and implementing tax reforms. So the other one is the monetary policy reform. So this may involve tightening the monetary policy to reduce inflation and increase foreign revenues. And the other one is structural reform, that is like involving improving the efficiency of the public sector, reducing corruption, promoting private sector investment, like that. And another one is social safety nets. So this is like involve and implementing policies to protect vulnerable people, population, such as providing healthcare and education, that sort of things. And also the exchange rate policies. This may like managing the exchange rate to promote export growth and reduce reliance on imports. So so these specific conditions attached, IMF loan will vary depending on the country's specific economic situation and the negotiations between IMF and the government. Like for example, if you take like 2021, the year 2021, Sri Lanka was facing number of economic challenges. Like for an example, including high level of public debt. Like Sri Lanka public debt to GDP ratio was around 95% in 2020, if I can remember right, and that is a significant burden on the economy. And also balance of payment crisis. Sri Lanka was facing a severe balance of payment crisis with a large trade deficit, declining foreign reserves, and limited access to international capital markets. And the currency depreciation. Sri Lanka rupee had this rupee had depreciated significantly against the US dollar, which increased the cost of imports and contributed to inflation. Also, the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic had significant impact on Sri Lanka economy, with a sharp decline in tourism and slowdown in other sectors. Also, the rising inflation. Sri Lanka was experienced high inflation, which was driven by a combination of supply chain disruptions due to the pandemic and monetary factors such as like excessive money printing by central bank. Those are like idiotic things. And political instability. The country had experienced a political instability in recent years, which has contributed to the policy uncertainty and made it difficult to implement economic reforms. So the Sri Lanka government, or I think they had been talking with the IMF to secure a loan to support economic and implement structural reforms. However, the negotiations had been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic and a lot of other factors. Uh, What else? What else? Oh, we need to talk about those YouTubers in Sri Lanka. They always try to badmouth the political situations, like so it's true that it's important to remember these individuals have their own beliefs and opinions, and they may be reflected to the content they create. However, it's possible that some Sri Lankan YouTubers may be critical of the current ruling party, you know and may create content that is designed to highlight perceived shortcomings or failures of the government, and they may do so with the aim of holding those in power accountable and promoting transparency and good governance. And additionally, there may be YouTubers who wish to use their platform to express dissenting opinions of advocate of social and political change in Sri Lanka. So this is a common practice in many countries where social media is used to as a tool to promote civic engagements and activism. And it's also possible that some YouTubers may have personal political motivations for creating content that is critical of the government, and it is important to critically evaluate the sources of information and be aware of the potential biases when consuming content on social media. And this chasing away Gotabe, that's also, it's not clear what is that what happened, but like if we refer to the protests and directed towards the Sri Lankan president Gotabaya Rajapaksa, it is important to note that individuals may have their own reasons for expressing dissenting opinions or calling for accountability from those in power. There may be a range of motivations for criticism directed towards Rajapaksa. Some individuals or groups may disagree with the policies or actions of the government, or may have concerns about issues such as human rights, corruption, or good governance. And it's also possible that political opposition parties or individuals may be motivated desire to gain power or influence in Sri Lanka. So in this case, it's important for individuals and these groups to have the freedom to express their opinions and engage in peaceful dissent without fear or retribution of persecution. So I think it's important to engage in critical thinking and consider multiple perspectives when evaluating information and opinions related to these political issues. And the other other guys who were involved was like the Sri Lankan diaspora. Like it refers to Sri Lankan individuals and communities who live outside of Sri Lanka. So typically in other countries, the diaspora may have an interest in Sri Lankan politics, economics, and social issues, and may engage in variety of activities related to their home country. And the diaspora may play a role in Sri Lankan politics in a number of ways. Example, like members of the diaspora may use their financial resources to support political campaigns or causes in Sri Lanka, and they may also what also use social media and other communication tools to share the information, organize protests or other actions to advocate for the political change. And additionally, like the diaspora may have influence on international perspectives of Sri Lanka. Like for example, if you take they may have used their networks and platforms to raise awareness about issues such as like human right abuses, or political repression in Sri Lanka, and to advocate for change on the global stage. So it is important, and again, note that the diaspora, like any group, is not monolithic and may have a range of opinions, beliefs, while some members of the diaspora may be critical of the Sri Lankan government or engaged in political activism. Others may be focused on the cultural or community activities, or may not be actively involved in Sri Lankan politics at all. And again, this Gotabe closed. I mean, he ordered a lockdown of the country in response to the COVID-19 in, I think, March 2020. The lockdown was aimed to at preventing spread of the virus and protecting the public health in Sri Lanka. But the lockdown has significantly impacted the Sri Lankan economy, as it led to disruption of economic activities and reduction in consumer spending, and many businesses were forced to close or reduce their operations, and unemployment rates increased. That's the result that came out of it. So, and despite of the economic impact of the lockdown, the Sri Lankan government has defended its decision to prioritize public health over economic concerns. And the government has implemented a range of measures aimed at mitigating these economic impacts of the pandemic, including like financial assistance and to affected businesses and individuals, and support for the tourism industry, which has been particularly hard hit by the pandemic. And I think it's worth noticing that the pandemic has had significant impact on economics around the world, and many countries have implemented lockdowns or other restrictions in response to the public health crisis. While these measures have been necessary to protect public health, they have had also significant economic impact, and governments have had to navigate a difficult balance between protecting public health and mitigating the economic impact of the pandemic. So, like people might be asking, like, what can Sri Lanka do to come out of the crisis? There are several things that Sri Lanka can do to help address its current economic crisis and work towards a strong and more sustainable economy. Like, for an example, if you strengthen the public health response to COVID-19, the pandemic contributes to a significant impact on the Sri Lankan economy, and strong public health response will be the key to minimizing the economic impact. And this will include measures such as widespread testing, contact tracing, and vaccination programs as such. And like implementing these structural reforms, Sri Lanka's economy has been struggling for some time, and structural reforms will be necessary to address underlying issues such as like high debt levels and lack of investment. And these reforms may include measures such as reducing government spending, improving tax collection, promoting private sector, and as I mentioned, like encouraging foreign investments, support small, medium-sized enterprises, because small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, are a vital part of Sri Lanka's economy, and supporting these businesses will be important to promote economic growth and job creation. And this also may involve in measures such as providing access to financing, improving regulatory frameworks, and promoting entrepreneurship. And see, like the social and environmental challenges, the government should address that. Sri Lanka faces a range of social and environmental challenges, including issues such as poverty, inequality, even environmental degradation. So, addressing these challenges will be important to promote long term sustainable economic growth and also strengthen regional trade relationships. Sri Lanka is well positioned to benefit from increased trade with neighboring countries in South Asia, and strengthening regional trade relationships could help boost the economic growth and job creation. This also may involve measures such as like reducing trade barriers and improving transportation infrastructure such like that. But it is worth noticing that the addressing Sri Lanka economic challenges will require a coordinated and sustained effort from the government and also civil society and the private sector. But however, by implementing the above measures and working together, I think Sri Lanka can begin build a strong and more resilient economy. And these Rajapaksas have a lot of allegations, and I cannot confirm or deny any allegations or corruptions against Namal or any other individual in the Rajapaksa family, but uh, uh, and it is important to note that allegations of corruptions are serious and should be thoroughly investigated through the appropriate legal channels. It is also important to recognize that individuals are innocent until proven guilty, and any allegation should be subject to a fair and impartial legal process. So, in general, it is important to exercise caution when making accusations of corruption or other wrongdoing, and to base such accusations on verifiable facts and evidence. And making unfounded or baseless accusations can damage these individuals' reputation and can undermine trust in institutions and the rule of law. So, this guy Namal, uh, he personally I know that this guy was the uh, in the parliament and cabinet minister of youth and sports, and during that his tenure, Namal Rajapaksa been involved in number of policy initiatives aimed to promote economic development, social welfare in Sri Lanka, and some of his key policy priorities included promoting youth entrepreneurship and employment. Even Namal has emphasized the importance of promoting entrepreneurship and creating employment opportunities for young people in Sri Lanka. He has also advocated for policies that support the development of small and medium sized enterprises, SMEs, as well as the initiative aimed at providing skills, training, and education to young people, and also investing in infrastructure. This Rajapaksa Namal or his father emphasized the importance of investing in infrastructure as means of promoting economic development and improving living standards in Sri Lanka. Also, he advocated for policies aimed at improving transportation networks, expanding accesses to electricity and other basic services, and promoting sustainable development. Uh, I personally know because he contacted me, and he was very interested in promoting Sri Lankan products, like teas and other sort of stuff, but he couldn't do it because of the crisis situation in Sri Lanka. And also, I know the tourism, promoting tourism is a key sector of the Sri Lankan economy, and Namal has been involved in initiatives aiming at promoting Sri Lanka as a tourist destination. Also emphasized in the importance of developing tourism infrastructure, improving the quality of tourism services, and promoting sustainable tourism practices, and also the enhancing sports development. As a young guy of and he was involved in initiative aimed at enhancing sports development in Sri Lanka. He also advocated for policies aimed at promoting sports among young people, improving sports infrastructure, enhancing Sri Lanka's international competitiveness in sports, you know. So, and also this strengthening the social welfare. Namal has emphasized the importance of strengthening the social welfare programs in Sri Lanka. Particularly, I have also supported that in areas such as healthcare, education, and poverty, to reduce poverty. Also advocated for policies aimed at improving access to healthcare and educational services, as well as initiatives aimed at addressing poverty and social inequality. So it is important to note the effectiveness of these policies will depend on a range of factors, including the level of resources allocated to their implementations, and the quality of policy implementation, and the broader political and economic context which they are implemented. Yeah. So again, I'll see you guys on another video. Hope this was not too harsh, and if you have any comments, questions and all, please feel to write down, and I'm more than happy to answer them. All right, thank you. See you with another video.